I will defeat the Powerpuff Girls, or my name isn't Mojo Projo.
Baylen the Haymaker versus Zoraline, Emery and Karth. I was interested in Zoraline. I don't think it's going to be particularly popular though, so I haven't bothered building it yet. One lander into a two lander, a pretty slow start for us, but we've got some slow ramp. We'll just try that one. We are last in the turn order, so us going slow probably isn't going to pan out too well for us. No plays on turn 1. We do get into a good means of token production though. Just drop a land and pass. Probably going to be doing that until turn 3. And we've got the wrong basics in here. Unforgivable. Ethereum Sculptor for the Emery player. Obviously an artifacts deck. And we saw the Orzhov player go for Sol Ring. Might see a decent game from this guy then. Have black market connections as well. A Grand Crescendo for us. More token generation. Emery, Lurker of the Lot, comes into play after that, and that is a 2 mana Everflowing Chalice, taps for 1 mana. We see Milled Urza, good. Frantic Search. Crystal Skull, Isu Spyglass, no idea what that is. No, it's just a means of playing historic spells off the top. And an Arcane Signet as well, so it does hit some artifacts. Black market connections, triggering for the first time for Zoraline, so be interesting to see if he's gone for Bat Tribal, or if it's just a generic means of, gaining card draw and extra treasure and stuff like that. He does go for the bat, and we see an Arcane Signet as well, still 5 cards in hand. A Suture Priest for the Zoraline player, and then cracks a treasure, and it looks like it is Bat Tribal, or at least there's a few bats in here. Whenever it attacks you gain a life, and it is a bat of course. Triggers the Suture Priest upon entry, so 35 life our opponent's at. Only 3 cards in hand though. An Audience with Tristani could draw us a couple of cards next turn if we go for the Growth Spasm here, which will fix our colours. We lose a life to Suture Priest when the Eldrazi Spawn enters. Karth into play, goes looking for a Planeswalker, and reveals to us Vivian Reed. Joyra's Familiar makes the artifacts cost 1 less, and then activating Emery for a 0 mana Arcane Signet because it costs 1 less to the Ethereum Sculptor as well, which allows our opponent into, was that a 1 mana Thoughtcast? Draw 2 cards. Then a Sack Outlet as well, Spawning Pit. Black market connections going for all the activations by the looks of it. Gone down to 30 life. And now we see Expedition Map searching for a land if they want to crack that. And they do decide to crack the Expedition Map. Vault of the Archangel being searched out by that for Death Touch and Lifelink. And out comes Zoraline, so yeah, when it enters, you can pay 2 mana and 2 life to get the Expedition Map back. Looks as though they are doing that. And then the 2/3 bat is swinging in towards Joyra. 3/2 bat swings in at us, so triggering Zoraline twice. Doesn't matter who they attack, it's just triggering on whenever a bat attacks, they gain a life. So we'll not lose our Eldrazi Spawn. Being outpaced by pretty much all our opponents here, I imagine, but we'll just hope that we can claw it back at some point. Well, the Emery player is just timing out on us here, so I'm hoping that, I wouldn't mind seeing the back of an Emery player to be honest, but I'm hoping we don't see an early scoop is my point. Alright, so down he goes. I'm not going to ban him for that because it might be that he had connection issues because Magic Online's weird. Alright, a Secure the Wastes. So we could, I've been thinking about the play to make here. I don't really want to miss a land drop, but I think we might have to. Farmer Cotton gets us lots of tokens, or it gets us more tokens than anything else really, which is better for Audience with Tristani as well, although we get more creature tokens here, but I don't think Baylen cares about creature tokens, it's just any, so yeah, we'll go for Farmer Cotton. I'm not going to sack the Eldrazi token because we want as many differently named creature tokens in play as possible for the Tristani. This one does care about creatures, it won't see food or treasure, anything like that. Suture Priest will trigger on any of our creature tokens entering as well. So we'll continue to bleed to the Suture Priest. Garruk Wildspeaker is the first Planeswalker able to untap lands, so untaps them by ticking up straight away. And that allows our opponent to also get down a dork in the Leyline Prowler. So Death Touch and Lifelink, a decent blocker for the Planeswalkers. Down to 26 off the black market connections. So again, taking all 6 life to that. Throws out the Vault of the Archangel. Essence Channeler is a new one from this set. That is another bat. As long as you have lost life this turn, it has Vigilance and Flying, so a 2-1 Vigilance Flyer. When you gain life, put a plus counter on it, and when it dies, the counters go on a target creature that you control. And now Death Touch and Lifelink going on to everything, so we're guessing that they're going to swing in all over the place here. Tapping out completely into Scholar of New Horizons as well. Enters with a plus counter. You can remove a counter from a permanent you control to search for a plains. You can put it onto the battlefield tapped if an opponent has more lands than you. And the Flyers go in at Garrick. We get the 3/2s. We're just going to have to take the damage here, unfortunately. I suppose we could block with the Farmer Cotton. Bunch of triggers go on the stack. Zoraline going to keep buffing this thing up. This is going to be massive thanks to all the incremental life gain. So ends up at a 9/8 and is likely going to be a flyer. Let's just chump block because we're being bleeded and aristocrated out. It is the tokens that we care about keeping in play. And then gaining lifelink damage, there's Essence Channeler triggering again. When the Garrick went down, Liliana, Dreadhorde General, into the Karth player's hand. I'm guessing they're not going to play that out and minus it down straight away. A Scoot Swarm when we can't get into lands. So if we go for our commander, we can tap 2 tokens to add a mana. So I'll have access to 1, 2, 3, yeah, maybe 4 if we crack the Eldrazi. And let's go for our commander anyway. Don't think we're going to be doing much this game, but I've said that before and then we end up coming back. So deal the damage with Suture Priest. We're just going to have to go after the audience with Trostani here, I think, because we're not getting into lands. Like I said, we've missed it for a few turns now. Alright, so making a plant token. Did draw into a land in the Cavern of Souls. I'll just name Rabbit with that because it's to keep our commander from being countered. Not that we have to worry about that this game. So we're probably just holding up the Secure the Wastes for another single token. I think we've been far too slow here compared to the Bat player. But one well-timed board wipe could get rid of this guy, I suppose. You'd assume that the Super Friends player would have a decent number of board wipes, which obviously would hurt us as well. And discard to hand size. Yeah, we'll just make that the Grand Crescendo. Couldn't hold that up this turn for a potential board wipe because the Cavern of Souls doesn't tap for white mana. Diabolic Intent sacrifices the Leyline Prowler. So we'll see if it's a Damnation or something like that. A Culling Ritual. So we're going to lose all of our stuff anyway, apart from our commander at least. So we sacrifice the Eldrazi Spawn to that, and then tap for a white mana, the plant tokens, and then allow the Culling Ritual to go off. Bunch of mana going to be created for our opponent. Bunch of plus counters from the Essence Channeler going on to the commander, so that could start threatening commander damage. 14 mana made by this player, so could go in for the Liliana and minus down on it, which we could respond to with the Secure the Wastes. But we're just not keeping our tokens in play here, unfortunately. Open the Way, where X is 3. Reveal cards from the top of your library. All the lands onto the battlefield tapped. Managing to ramp quite nicely there. I think they hit all 3 lands. As Vesuva comes in as a copy of something, making it just a copy of the Overgrown Tomb. Alright, Binding of the Old Gods has to go after the Bat Commander over there, you would assume. I think Liliana... Oh, it's each player sacrifices 2 creatures, so they obviously weren't going to go for that, with the Karth being the only creature in play. So yeah, Binding of the Old Gods does go on to the Zoraline, and I think we've successfully seen the Bat player slowed down. It was an impressive start though. And then we saw Vivian Reed revealed to us before off the commander entering, so that comes down into play. They gain a life from casting a Planeswalker. We'll wait for them to activate the Planeswalker before we use our mana on Secure the Wastes. And going for the minus, really hammering this Bat player. This is why you play it out. The board can completely change in just one turn, so make a couple of tokens with Secure the Wastes. A Grasp of Fate entering now, so there goes our commander most likely. Now, can we remove the enchantment? We could go for Season of the Burrow, and that would get our commander back into play. It doesn't give us the best use of Season of the Burrow though. Although I suppose we could do that. that would give them back the Planeswalker as well, so it encourages this player to use removal on the enchantment to get his Planeswalker back. So we'll put our commander back into the command zone and continue to go incredibly slowly. Does decide to swing in at the Planeswalker player, so that opens us up for Reaver Cleaver, maybe. But we had to play and equip it in one turn, and we won't generate that much mana off it. Okay, a Sol Ring might change things. So if we go Sol Ring, and we actually didn't have the double white for Season of the Burrow anyway, so that wouldn't have been a particularly good play. We could make creature tokens with the Scepter of Celebration. That gives us a bigger buff as well, ready for a Reaver Cleaver on the next turn perhaps. I think we just arbitrarily go for that, to be honest. We have at least accelerated our mana ahead with the Sol Ring, assuming that we get to keep it in play. The Karth player keeps holding up priority, so I wonder if he's got some means of free interaction. Anyway, we'll go into the right and hope that we don't see any removal. If they want to use removal on a 1/1 warrior token, then I suppose that's not the worst thing for us. Does successfully hit for 3 damage, so we get 3 citizen tokens, and our token generation is starting to look a little bit better. The Binding of the Old Gods gets out a tapped dual land. That's an interesting bit of tech. The Nesting Grounds going to remove a counter from Binding of the Old Gods onto a land, and therefore it hits level 2 again next turn for some more ramp. If you've got not a whole lot else to do, I suppose you might as well. 2 mana for 1 land is not a bad return. Lolth Spider Queen going to generate tokens, I dare say. And does mana down for a couple of 2/1 Menace Reachers. Zoraline into play again, because it's back tribal, running the Path of Ancestry for a Scry 1. When it enters, paying for the cost on that, so 2 life, 2 mana, and targeting the Black Market Connections, getting that straight into play again. Still at 39 life over there. And attacks in at the Lolth, so he's going to trigger life gain, and likely be taken down by a spider, maybe a couple of spiders. No, just chump blocking with the 1. Yep, chump blocking with both of them, so 3 creatures go down here. Loyalty counters being added to Lolth when the spiders go down. Now, what we're going to do here, I have no idea. An Ocelot. Don't have too much means of life gain in here, but something worth considering with regards to generating additional tokens. We can hit Planeswalkers with Reaver Cleaver, which is noteworthy. But the problem is it's only a +1 buff, so that's 4 toughness to, or 4 power to 5 toughness, so could try and get the tokens through here, but I think we're best setting up with our commander again, to be honest. So then we've got 1, 2 mana on the tokens. We could go for the Anointed Procession setup, I suppose. So we'll do that here and see if we can... I don't think they're going to trade out the Zoraline for the sake of us getting through with the Citizen Token generator. So let's go Anointed Procession, and then we'll see if they want to trade their commander. This is why it's so important that players play it out, because we can't do much against this guy, but we can get some of our deck going thanks to the Bat player actually deciding to play it out. Does allow it through as we expected, so that will generate 6 tokens in this instance. And so we could just play out the Reaver Cleaver and just have it sat there. Our opponent gets to play around it is the problem. Or do we just want to draw cards? I think we're best to try and draw a card. Maybe by some miracle we'll actually get into a land. If we get into a land, I'll hold up the other tokens as chump blockers, but hopefully won't need them. A Raise the Alarm is not good. Or it is good, but it's not what we need right now. So we'll try for a land again. And there we go, a Verdant Catacombs. So not sure if I've got the Surveil lands in here. Not much point in getting down the Ocelot Pride unless we want to get Summoning Sickness off it. I suppose that might be good with the Scepter of Celebration, so let's do that. Because we might not get damage through with the Scepter, but we can at least gain the life with the Ocelot and therefore trigger it. So in that case it can be Savannah. And we finally got our double white. Play the Ocelot. Level 2 onto Binding the Old Gods again. So going for another landing tapped. Nesting Grounds doing the Saga trick again. And then minusing down for a couple of spider tokens. Ophiomancer, speaking of tokens, it will make a snake during every turn. And depending on death touches as opposed to board wipes, which is a more interesting way of doing Super Friends, I think. Board wipes are obviously more likely to take out Karth the Lion as well, and he likely wants to keep this in play, you would assume, so yeah, getting Death Touch blockers into play is a more fun means of playing Super Friends. He's keeping that Liliana safe in his hand though. 32 life, made a treasure, a shapeshifter, and have to imagine he drew a card, he didn't have that many in hand. Recruiter of the Guard gets to, is it toughness? Yeah, it cares about toughness 2 or less into hand. Basilica Screecher, another bat, that one has extort. And getting the scries off with the Path of Ancestry could edge him closer to a board wipe or whatever he feels as though he needs. The Recruiter of the Guard went for a Soul Warden. Try and gain a bunch of life. He didn't play Soul Warden before the Basilica bat, playing it after the fact. And yeah, we want to get a lot of tokens in, so the Soul Warden is going to be of some relevance. Doesn't pay the extort cost with 2 cards in hand, so maybe wants to use the Zoraline ability. Swings in towards us because we don't have any flyers or reaches. Gains a life and then pays 2 life and 2 mana. Argument to be made for Suture Priest here maybe, although there is that bat that gets absolutely huge. Yeah, the Suture Priest is probably the one to go for. So how do we make our attacks next turn? Get another land is good. I think I want to go for Season of the Burrow to help deal with some stuff on the board here. Probably has to be Lolth and the Karth, and then we can swing a first striker in over here. So it can be Season of the Burrow. We'll go 2 on there, make a couple of rabbit tokens. 2 rabbit tokens thanks to the Anointed Procession, so Karth and the Lolth go down. They will draw 2 cards to that. The Season cycle is a very good one. That's the first one I've ever played, so hopefully we'll see more of those. They successfully go down, so we make a couple of rabbit tokens, first time I've seen those as well, which means we bleed for 2, and the Soul Warden will gain 2 life for our opponent. So we want to be gaining incremental life ourselves anyway, so the Ocelot might be a bit more relevant than I thought it was going to be. Scoot Swarm is probably for after a board wipe at this point, so Reaver Cleaver onto Baylen perhaps, but they've got a Death Toucher in the way, so we could just take that over here and see how they block. Depends how much mana we need, doesn't it really? Let's put the Scepter onto the first striker first of all. So now that is a 3-1. Play the Flooded Strand, and I think we do want Reaver Cleaver in play. So tap down a couple of rabbits, which we will get copies of if the Ocelot Pride lands. And we have to tap down most of our tokens here anyway, so let's just pile in on the Ocelot Pride and see what happens. Alright, so now a 4-2 Trample First Striker with lifelink. And we'll head into the left and see if we can make any tokens at all. Have drawn our opponent some cards this turn, so it might be that he has some spot removal. Can maybe get rid of the Scepter and then still make profitable blocks to get rid of the Ocelot as well. Alright, deciding to keep the creatures and just take it, which is fine with us. So create treasure tokens, create just as many citizen tokens as well. So that is 8 citizen tokens, meaning we are going to lose 8 life to the Suture Priest. Did gain a bit of life from the Ocelot Pride at least though, to help try and control that damage a little bit. The Bat player was showing concern that he didn't think he'd be able to keep up with us and come back from this, but just shows why you should play it out, because Suture Priest alone could be enough to get rid of us. And he's still at 42 life there. I mean, it's not like we've dealt a massive amount of damage to the Super Friends player either. And then we get the treasure tokens as well, so let's just draw a few cards here just in case there's something we want to do. If I can get into a Seaborn Muse or something, I'd be very happy. Okay, a land. Fetch land for the Scoot Swarm maybe. Not worthy that we're going to make even more citizen tokens to the to the Ocelot Pride at the end of the turn. Skull Clamp. Do we want Skull Clamp to try and remove that Suture Priest? Might be an idea. At the moment it's better card draw than our commander is. So throw down the Skull Clamp by cracking a treasure. Could tap 2 treasure in order to keep those in play. Obviously get more mana if we crack them. So go after some tapped creatures. I'll keep as many different names in play as possible just because it's a good habit to get into. So I won't go after the warrior tokens. Just focus on the citizens. And clearing lands off the top. A Farseek, Gaia's Cradle. Doesn't look as though we're going to get to do anything here. Could draw into a Swords to Plowshares maybe. More lands. Alright, Beast Within is enough for the Suture Priest, so I'll try once more, but I think we're going to be tapping down a couple of tokens to make enough mana for a Beast Within. Alright, an Unexpected Windfall we could go for as well. Potentially greedy, but it does allow us to fix the cards in our hand a bit better because we're not doing incredibly at the moment, even though I just drew a bajillion cards. And this assumes that the Ocelot is going to stay in play as well. Also maximises the amount of treasure that we make, so yeah, just discard a basic. We'll make 2 treasure, draw 2 cards. And that gets us, I'm happy with, an Impakal. But yeah, just drawing into a bunch of lands. So we will go through to the end step, I think. And we can just Beast Within now, it doesn't really matter. So Suture Priest, how is this worded? Do we give our opponent a beast? For each token you control that entered this turn, alright, so it doesn't work like that. Might have had to wait until after the Ocelot trigger. So I'll pay 2 mana and then go for a mana by tapping down a couple of treasure, just so that we can keep these in play. And Beast Within is going on to the Suture Priest, just so that it doesn't take us out here. That will be exiled because it has a finality counter on it, so we won't have to worry about that again. Beast did enter under their control, so they draw or gain 1 life. And Ocelot Pride is going to be more relevant than I thought it was going to be. I mentioned in the deck tech I wasn't sure about having that in the list, but we've managed to make it work here. I'm just going to hope that we don't crash the client. We get 1,000,000 citizen tokens, a few bunnies, lots of treasure mana as well. And then that will put a heap of triggers on the Soul Warden. So Magic Online being really sluggish as it does all this. Well, there we go, Soul Warden. In response to all the tokens we just made. Thought we should make more treasure than that actually. Maybe I'm misunderstanding something. Oh, it's for each token you control that entered this turn, so it does have to see the tokens when it makes the copy, which is noteworthy. So if you want to make lots of copies of treasure, you have to not use them when Ocelot triggers at the end step. These little intricacies of the new cards are well worth knowing, I think, and hopefully they're of some use to the viewers when we spot things like this. Alright, so then we discard hand size, get rid of some shock lands. We don't want to be taking any life. Don't particularly care about that many fetches either. Carney Garden can go down. So there we are, not a whole lot to do at instant speed. We can draw more cards and pile plus counters onto the Baylen if we want to, and finally start trying to make that a threat. 5 cards in the Golgari player's hand, 2 of which we drew in. Doubling season. I do hope that he's got that Liliana. What's the limit break on that? I think it enters, yeah. Each opponent chooses a permanent they control and sacks the rest. So we're going to have to attempt to find an answer. This is why I wanted Swords to Plowshares for the Suture Priest, really. Because Beast Within on a Planeswalker would be a lot more feasible. So we're going to have to try and get into an answer here. And that does mean tapping down our creatures, which means we're not as good on blockers. Ancient Tomb. A Queen Elenal, Wheel of Fortune, and there we are. Exactly what we needed, Generous Gift. So go after the doubling season immediately. Luckily, after my error, we still had enough to make some treasure tokens, enough to generate mana here. We'll go after some tokens being tapped as well, maybe. And I'll crack a treasure, and then we've got enough mana and tokens untapped for card draw and stuff. So did manage to get into the Generous Gift. Baylen's pretty good apparently. I mentioned this in the deck tech as well, but I don't have Great Hoof in the deck. That's an obvious one to include. Lily comes down and makes a zombie token. I do have Elesh Norn, but an obvious include would be something like Chord of Calling into Greater Hoof. Depends how spiky you want to be really. I was trying not to be boring and just going for Great Hoof win off the tokens. Anyway, we'll see what the Orzhov player can do. He's back up to 65 life, so can put all the life into the black market connections. Tutoring up the Soul Warden as definitely put him back in the game. Might be worth having a Soul Warden in this deck maybe. Not a life gain deck like I said, but if we are going to insist on having this, then life gain pulls double duty. It can buy us extra turns like it has done for this player, as well as helping to trigger the cat. And obviously it plays very well into all the tokens as our opponent has shown us. Alright, Insatiable Avarice could always go for a board wipe. They've paid the spree on that twice, I think. 5 mana in total. So they're going to get a tutored card into hand plus 2 additional ones. Could be a Toxic Deluge or Vanquish the Horde, something like that. They have to be careful with Toxic Deluge because we can buff our commander. We can do that twice. So they would have to put 6 extra life into the Toxic Deluge if that's what they've tutored for. Put this in a few of my decks, but I haven't seen it played yet, so I'm glad the back player is here because we're seeing the value of certain cards that I haven't been able to show yet. Deciding to get some attacks in before he does anything else, which again will suggest a wipe. Going in towards the Liliana, just deciding to dedicate everything, which is probably a good idea. Not throwing any Soul Warden, curiously, but gains life on the attacks with Zoraline, and is obviously going to be able to activate it for some more reanimation if he wants to. Foregoes the activation on the Zoraline this time. So it would be nice if both Ophiomancer and the Death Toucher went down here, because it would free up the Baylen a lot better. They're obviously going to block with the Snake because it immediately gets replaced. And then Reachers go, okay, double blocking on Zoraline. And that's it for the blockers, so everything else gets through. Just looking at Queen Alanal now, and say 38. No haste for us at the moment, unfortunately. Lily sees creatures die. Sticks in play at 2 loyalty, but not as likely to get the limit break now. But does draw 3 cards. And then it's through to the second main. Does not do anything now, which is curious, so I was fully expecting a board wipe there. Let's go for the buffs onto our commander, I think. Have to tap down 4 tokens in order to do this. And we could always just sacrifice our commander, buff it up enough, and then give it trample with the Reaver Cleaver. Make a bunch of tokens, take out this player, and then we've obviously got the mana then to recast the commander after it goes down to Death Touch. So Ophiomancer replaces the Snake that it just lost. And we can still trigger the Ocelot Pride this turn if we leave the... there's the Swords to Plowshares. Yeah, if we leave the Scepter on there, the first strike makes a big difference with the Ocelot Pride, because we can still swing in over here and not have it go down. And that means that we're triggering life gain for even more tokens, and yeah, I think that's going to be well worth it. Gaia's Cradle to ruin our opponent's day. We'll throw Reaver Cleaver onto our commander. And do we just see if we can get both of our opponents here? Try and get into Elesh Norn or something? This player holding up priority again, so once again he might have removal, even though he doesn't have mana held up. Gaia's Cradle is going to tap for a bajillion mana, so we'll try and hold off on that. I think the Queen Alanel is going to be a good idea to get into play because we're going to make tokens during this combat. Plus it gets Summoning Sickness off it for next turn. Then again, we could get into a Lightning Greaves or something because this gives trample as well. So we could try and get a bunch of damage through here also. Or swap the attackers, Baylen in here and the Queen in there. This is where commander damage becomes relevant. Once again, the Golgari player holding up priority. Tempted to go for Swords to Plowshares onto this, just so that the client doesn't crash, but that's a terrible use of a piece of removal, using it to make the client not balk. So let me just go Skull Clamp onto a few things before we go through to combat. I'll try my luck on the whole Elesh Norn thing. Not sure if we've got creature tutors in here actually, maybe should have 1 or 2. Oh, alright. Well, there's a Finale of Devastation, so we'll just do that instead. Forgot that was in the deck. Elesh Norn is 7 mana. We want to do 10 on a Finale of Devastation though. I think it's 10. Yeah, 10 in order to get the buff. So 26 mana floating from the Gaia's Cradle. 10 into X on Finale of Devastation. We will search the library. Grab ourselves the Elesh Norn. This is a little bit more unique than Krayt at least. And upon entry that triggers the Soul Warden for the last time. Draws a couple more cards with Liliana, but pretty much wipes our opponent's board. So we'll just give up on the 23 mana or 26 floating mana and hope that we've actually got the win here. Our opponents are being very patient and actually playing this out. So that's commander damage over here. And then we'll throw in a load to the left. But we'll take this player down to 0 life as well, just in case they can remove the commander. Might be that he has a Teferi's Protection or something, so we'll try and play around that. You'd think he'd play that in response to the Wrath though. Then again, with Finale of Devastation, he doesn't know what we're tutoring for, in all fairness. So it might be that he didn't get chance. Maybe he wanted to go Teferi's Protection in response to the big buff, but didn't realise that we'd take out his board with it. Anyway, I've just thrown a load of stuff at random all over the place, so we'll see what happens there. And now our opponent's going for something, so maybe he does have the Teferis. Batwing Broom. Forgot all about Batwing Broom. Prevent all combat damage. And that's why we're playing around effects such as Teferi's Protection. We do have to deal damage for our equipment to take place, so that is going to stop us on this instance. And are we attacking with enough creatures? Oh, actually, I've passed priority, haven't I? I could have potentially kept myself alive. Swords to Plowshares. It did take us out. I should have gone Swords to Plowshares onto the Queen there. We would have gained, like, I don't even know how big it was at that point. But that was a fun one. I was in a mindset of trying to rush through because my opponents, I didn't want them to scoop on us. This is just what it's like on Magic Online, as you all know. But we actually have patient players here, so I should have taken my time. We do lose life equal to the number of attacking creatures we control. So should have gone for the Swords to Plowshares onto the Queen. But got to see what Baylen does at least. Got to show this player that he shouldn't give up as easily either, because he did think that he wasn't going to be in the game for much longer. And that once again just shows why you don't give up and you play it out, because your opponents can make mistakes. Get to see some more out of Zoraline as well, which I've enjoyed watching. So now it's a Defense of the Heart for our opponent. Has all the broken enchantments in here apparently. And down comes Grey Merchant of Asphodel after that, only knocking our opponent down to 59 life. Not likely to get Defense of the Heart to trigger at the moment, but the back player does want to get creatures into play. So Journey to Eternity, enchanting the Grey Merchant of Asphodel. Could maybe tick down on the Liliana at some point over the next few turns. Makes a zombie token. And then the 3/3 goes into the right. In all fairness, the client was getting really sluggish there, and I think the game might have crashed anyway if our opponents couldn't deal with all the tokens that we had, which I have a feeling it wouldn't have done. We wouldn't have made additional tokens with the Ocelot at least, because that really would have ruined things, but yeah, I think we might have broken the client in the end, which wouldn't have been a satisfying conclusion, so yeah, I think it's a lot more fun this way. If they can't deal with our board during the next turn cycle, then it was pretty much just swinging for another Alpha Strike with the Elesh Norn in play, and could probably have protected our board trying to draw into Clever Concealment, which we likely could have played for free. That's probably how we would have tried to make it pan out for us. Anyway, it does make a creature token. Made a hell of a lot of use out of the black market connections this game, often going for the full 6 life into this. Aklazot's a legendary bat god. When it attacks, each opponent discards a card. If they discard a land, you make a bat. Ripples of Undeath as well, another one that I've been wanting to see play with. And looks as though he's finishing the turn with a Dorothy Voidwalker, which is noteworthy actually because it does switch off the Journey to Eternity, I think. Because the Grey Merchant won't die, it'll be exiled. This a replacement effect? Yeah, instead exile it with a Void counter on it, so they could make use of the Grey Merchant of Asphodel themselves at some point. A lot more devotion to black over here at the moment. Anyway, they played right into the Defense of the Heart, so that triggers on the next turn. Might have not wanted to make a Shapeshifter. Went after Vorinclex, which is another doubling season pretty much, so they could just get the win here. Kura, the Boundless Sky also, but that's a dies trigger. And there we go, Ugin the Spirit Dragon, so not automatically a win, but they do get to gain 7 life, draw 7, and put 7 permanents into play. And if that's a bunch of Planeswalkers, then each of those will enter with double the counters as well. So down comes Ugin with 14 loyalty, all off the back of a mistimed Shapeshifter. So ticking that down goes down to 4, and down come a bunch of permanents, yet another one that I've wanted to see play of. Disciple of Freyalise gets to sacrifice something and refill the hand. A Rasta to make tokens. Nightshade Dryad, a Death Touch blocker. Renan 7, -8, return all permanents from your graveyard to your hand. You have no max hand size. Nissa Ascended Animist. Until end of turn, creatures get +1/+1 for each forest you control and gain trample. And Freyalise is draw a card for each green creature you control. So they don't have too much mana to make use of all the card draw. I don't think they sacrificed anything with the Disciple either. So just going through to attacks without... Okay. And then we've been kicked out into... Yeah, been kicked out into the lobby here. Or into the deck builders page. That's a shame. Apologies for that. It might be that the Super Friends player just quit, or the bat player quit. I'm not sure who. Maybe there'll be a frame that I can get to in the editing process that'll show us. Maybe someone threw up the GGs in the chat. But yeah, with Baylen at the end there, we had the Queen in play that was like 60 power or something crazy. So Swords to Plowshares onto that would have kept us alive. Then it's just a case of dodging board wipes for long enough to get us into the win with the LS Norn, which obviously was still in play. We could hopefully have dodged a board wipe with the Clever Concealment as well, which likely would have been free, like I said. But yeah, apologies for the anticlimactic conclusion there, but I think that was a really fun game, and we definitely got to show off our commander, show off the power of this thing. Got off to a really bad start compared to our opponents, but soon got back into it after being left alone for a turn or two. So Baylen the Haymaker, a very, very good one apparently, as we all thought it was. Big thank you to the patrons for their continued support of the channel. If you want to get your name in the credits or get dedicated videos, then you can follow the link through to Patreon via the link in the description below. Big thank you to those of you who do that already. I'm tribalkai. Thank you for watching.